Okay, let's see. Voila. Let's let Mr. White, Mr. Patrick. And where's okay, we're not on the record yet, but in Aguilar versus Aguilar, I see Mr. Aguilar is present. I don't see anybody signed in under the name of Mrs. Aguilar. I do have a telephone number in here. Council,
I just spoke to her 15 minutes ago and confirmed the Zoom number.
all right, I see now there's two phone numbers. Well, actually somebody in a Galaxy notebook. Let me see who these folks are. And as I identify them, I'll kick out the ones that are the wrong ones. I've got a telephone number ending in 7829. What is your name, please?
Catherine Fouch.
Okay, Ms. Fouch, I'm going to put you back in the waiting room. I've had to see who you were. I'm going to put your name on this so I know who you are.
Hello.
It's time to bring you back. Hold on, please.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have a phone number ending in 7828. What is your name?
Jesse Fouch.
Hold on a second. I'm going to put you back in the waiting room till I'm ready to call your case. And who is this on the Galaxy Note 9?
Alana Aguilar.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, councils, it look like we're going to have a trial today.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let me just quickly check with Mr. and Mrs. Fouch. They're also scheduled for a trial. I don't want to keep them waiting through a trial if indeed they've worked things out. So if you could all just remain quiet while I bring them in and see if I can't get them on their way, okay? Okay, Shannon, if you could put us on the record. This is a matter of Fouch versus Fouch. We have both parties present.
Yep.
So I know you folks were here on the 21st of January, and I thought you'd worked everything out. Have you not been able to get a judgment of divorce approved?
There hasn't been one that's been submitted to the courts yet.
Are you planning on submitting one soon?
This is where.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe we were just confused on the process of what needs to happen.
All right, I thought I explained that. I usually do. If I didn't, my apologies. It is your obligation to prepare a consent judgment of divorce. Typically, when you filed your case, you were given a blank divorce judgment. You need to fill that out. Both of you sign it. Take that signed consent judgment to the front of the court so that a referee can review it and make sure that everything that's supposed to be in it is in it. And then once the referee has approved it, you can bring it back to me, back to the courthouse actually, and then I can sign it and then you will be divorced.
Do you have any
Do
questions
you
about?
not, do you not have a blank copy of a judgment?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure there's somewhere online that I can pull one from if I need to.
All right, here's what we're going to do. Ma'am, can you give me your email address?
Yep, it's KATIE 13
I think I might have missed something. I've got Katie, and what comes after Katie?
Anna as in Mary, W13 @hotmail.com.
All right, give me that one more time. I want to make sure I've got it right.
KATIE MW13 @hotmail.com.
All right, I have got that. What I'm going to do is have my law clerk, when we get a break, send you a blank judgment of divorce so that you've got the right form. And then it will be up to you to fill that out. You and Mr. Fauch need to sign it, get it over to the front of the court. A referee will review it. If it's got everything in it, they will approve it, and then you can bring it back to the courthouse and I can sign it and you'll be divorced. So I'm gonna move your case to a status conference in 2 weeks.
Okay,
That'll be at 1:30 on February the 17th. I'm sorry, February the 18th. As long as you've got that approved judgment back to me by then, there's no need to appear. I will sign it and you'll be divorced, okay?
okay. Jesse, do you have anything to add to any of this?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll get that out to you. It probably won't go immediately. I want to make sure that my clerk has the right form, and then we'll go from there. All right, thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks or sooner.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Okay, Peter, I know that form is on the computer somewhere, but there are several different versions, so I want to see what it is before we actually send it. I wrote down her email address, just remind me afterwards and we'll track it down. Okay, so let's see. Gentlemen, is there anything preliminary?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Aguilar, would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your full name for the record.
Alana
Put your hand down.
Denise Aguilar.
Great. Go ahead, Mr. White.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Aguilar, I need to ask you some questions that the court needs to establish to grant you a divorce. So let's go through those first. Do you remember signing the complaint for divorce in this matter?
Yes, I do.
When you signed it, were all the allegations true?
Yes, they were.
Do they remain true today?
Yes, they do.
Any living minor children born or adopted of your marriage?
No, sir.
Are you pregnant today?
No, sir.
And once we complete this, you'd like the court to find that there's been a breakdown of the marriage relationship to the extent that the object of matrimony has been destroyed And there's no reasonable likelihood it can be preserved?
Correct.
Okay. When did you meet Mr. Aguilar?
I met Mr. Aguilar, I want to say approximately or right around 5 years ago. We met on the internet.
Okay. What type of program or app did you meet on?
We met on Facebook
At some point, did you actually, and where were you living at when you met Mr. Aguilar?
in Texas, where I am now.
Where's that at?
That is in my home where
What's
my
your
parents
address?
are. 683 County Road 6479, Dayton, Texas 77535.
When was it that you first actually met Mr. Aguilar?
We met for the first time the weekend of New Year's 2018.
Where did you meet at?
We met at the Detroit airport, and then we went from there to the Bay Mills Resort for a snowmobiling trip.
How long were you here?
Approximately a week.
When was the next time you saw him?
I flew into Detroit in March of 2018, and we drove down to Daytona for Bike Week.
Were either one of you married at the time, do you know?
Yes, sir, he was.
You were aware of that?
Yes, sir.
At some point, did the relationship become more serious with Mr. Aguilar?
Yes, sir, it did.
Did you move up to Jackson? And if so, when was that?
I moved up to Jackson on May the 2nd of 2018.
What'd you bring with you?
I brought with me my Jeep and small furniture items. I brought my craft. I do crafts, so I brought a bunch of those belongings, basic kitchen utensils. Once I arrived, I had bought a set of pots and pans and some silverware and things that I needed for my general things that I needed for the apartment to set up a home.
Where did you move to?
Granada Apartments.
Were you living with Mr. Aguilar, or was it just you?
It was just me.
At some point, did you and Mr. Aguilar begin to reside together?
Yes, sir. That was on February of 2019. We moved into an apartment in Trillium Points.
Did you move in together before or after you were married?
Before we were married.
You were married, what, February 9th, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What was the financial arrangement when you moved in together and got married?
I had my bank account. He had his bank account. And I gave him money every week from my job. I worked there at Trillium Point Apartments as a leasing agent. And I gave him money from every paycheck and put into his account.
Did he give you any money from his paychecks?
No, sir. He bought food, groceries, and any activities that we did extracurricular, he paid for.
Did the two of you, or strike that, did you purchase any items for your marital household there at Trillium while you were married?
Yes, sir. I bought a set of pots and pans, various decorative items. And we went together and got a new couch and with the big comfy chairs that match. Originally, we had got a couch and a love seat, but they didn't work out. We kept having issues with them. So I went back and we traded those back in and got new furniture.
And who paid for those?
He paid from them with his account.
Did you contribute at all?
I paid the household bills. I gave him money out of my paycheck every 2 weeks into his account. And then once the rent was due, the rent consisted of the actual rent, the internet, the cable, and the 3 garages that we had to rent to store his things and a few of mine.
So you paid all of the bills associated with the apartment?
Yes, sir. I paid the electric bill as well. It was in my name.
Did Mr. Aguilar pay for any of the rent or utilities, anything like that with Trillium Point?
He never paid any of the utilities. The checks were from him out of his account because I had transferred the money into his account. And there were times where I couldn't afford to give him the $500 every week or every 2 weeks, that I gave him $400. And so he would pick up the small extra to pay the difference.
At some point, did you and Mr. Aguilar begin to have some marital difficulties?
Yes, sir.
Did you have an incident, I believe, in Indiana that involved the police?
Yes, sir, there was.
When was that?
That was October 12th of 2019.
Tell the court where you were and what happened.
We were at the Yogi Bear campground, and Al had set up for us to leave our toy hauler camper on a camping site for the entire month. They charged us for the weekends, and it was Halloween time, so we took the boys whenever we had the boys. And then there was one weekend where we didn't have the boys. That was supposed to be our weekend. And that is when our incident occurred.
What happened?
Al and I both had been drinking. He did not want, it was a Saturday, and every Sunday morning, his ex-wife drops off the children at our apartment at 6:30 a.m. I asked him if we could have Kenny, who has babysit the kids multiple times, go to the apartment and be there for them and stay with them till about 10 o'clock or so, to give us a chance to go ahead and stay that Saturday night and enjoy our time together. And he did not agree. He was upset. He said no, that his ex-wife would try and use that against him, dealing with their custody matters with the boys. And so we were both upset. I went into our camper to pick a movie out. We were going to watch a movie, and he didn't like the movie that I picked out. And he began to get a little aggressive. He initially tried to be sexually aggressive with it, and he forced me down on the bed and bit both sides of my buttocks. And then I screamed, I hollered, it hurt very badly. And when I got up from that, because I screamed, he pushed me against a wall and held me by my neck, choking me. When he did this, I passed out, and I would wake up to him slapping me in the face, telling me to quit faking. I passed out multiple times doing this. And the last time that I woke up, he reared his hand back and said, if you scream again, I'm going to give you something to scream about. I managed to get free from him at that time, and I ran out the camper door. The neighbors that were camped next to us at that point had already called the police because they heard me screaming.
Did the police show up?
Yes, sir, they did.
What happened after the police showed up?
They questioned me. They saw my lip. My face was red from being slapped. My neck was swollen and red. And they questioned me. And I said that he choked me I passed out. And when I was finally able to get free, then I ran out the door and ran over to where there were other campers where I could be safe.
What did the police do after you told them your story?
They went to Mr. Aguilar and at that point in time arrested him and took him to jail.
What did you do? Did you have any injuries that required treatment?
They insisted that I go in the ambulance to the hospital. And yes, sir, I had to have a CAT scan done. I had a busted lip. I had previously had a cold sore on my lip, and that had opened up. And then on the inside of my mouth was bruised. They took pictures of my buttocks where it was bruised with the teeth marks around it. And I was basically in a state of shock at that time.
Were you admitted to the hospital then, or were you just treated in the emergency room?
I was treated in the emergency room, and then one of the policemen escorted me back to the camper.
Did you have medical insurance that covered at least some of the cost of this, of the emergency room visit from the assault?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. How much is the copay that you owe? Let me double check. It's called Cameron Memorial Community Hospital, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How much do you owe Cameron Community Hospital after insurance as a result of Mr. Aguilar's assault?
I owe Cameron not approximately. There was a $30 bill that I had received from them, and I still am trying to get the ambulance bill. It was separate.
What's the total bill that you owe Cameron right now? My copy's cut off. I can't read it.
It's $800.
Okay. So you owe $800. There was an ambulance ride. Have you received a bill for that yet?
No, sir. I changed addresses and I've been trying to get that forwarded to me.
So it's possible that you owe for an ambulance ride, but you don't know at this point.
Yes, sir.
Did you stay with Mr. Aguilar after the assault?
No, sir. There was a
What'd you do
protective
then?
order. There was a protective order against him. We were not to be around each other. So I went back to the apartment and I got a U-Haul and I loaded up my personal belongings into the U-Haul and I left. I wasn't able to get everything at that time, but I did get as much as I could. And I left and drove home to Texas to stay with my family and, of course, try and heal and get myself together.
Have you been back since?
Yes, sir.
What'd you come back for?
Mr. Aguilar and I had talked and he agreed. We wanted to try and work our marriage out. He told me that if I came back, he would get the car back that he had for me given to his sister, and so I could get a job. And we were going to counseling and get things back on track. But he also told me that I had to get the charges that were against him dropped because we couldn't have our marriage in a relationship if he had charges over his head.
Okay. And what steps did you take what kind of charges were these? Do you know if they were felonies or misdemeanors?
He had a felony charge of strangulation and he had misdemeanor charge of domestic abuse.
What did you do with the prosecutor or whatever they call them in Indiana to deal with that case?
I sent them multiple emails and letters explaining that we were both intoxicated. I tried very persistently to ask them to please drop the charges. Mr. Aguilar was very adamant. He would stay on me. He would get irritated if I didn't stay persistent with the calling and provide them any kind of information that would lead it to where those charges could be dropped.
Eventually they were dropped, weren't they?
Yes, sir, they were.
Did you work on your marriage like the two of you had talked about?
No, sir.
So then what happened? Is that why we're here now?
Yes, sir. We moved into, we had originally, when I had came back, we had moved into his mom's house temporarily. And then we found a trailer in the Wyndham Hills trailer park. And we set up our home there so we would have a nice home for the boys to come and stay with us at. And he had to take anger management classes that he was not happy about. He was very upset and did not want to take them. But he did continue to start taking them. But he was constantly aggravated, very on edge, always angry. I couldn't say anything correct or breathe right, and he was fussing at me constantly.
Was there a specific incident that led you to finally file for divorce, or was it just an accumulation of all the things that had gone on?
Well, March the 1st, our plan was for me to fly down to Houston and spend a couple of weeks with my parents. They're elderly, and help them get some things done that they needed done. And then he and the boys were going to drive down when the boys got their spring break, and they were going to come down there, pick me up, and we were going to tour some of the local activities and things like that. And he never came. And then COVID came in, and of course that made that worse. But I would call and text, telling him, hey, come get me, I can fly back home, something. And he never would. He did not agree. He said that no, he still had the charges on him and that we could not move forward with our marriage until the charges were dropped.
So what happened then?
He became less and less. He wouldn't contact me by phone. He wouldn't answer my calls, would not answer my texts, only every once in a while. Said he was trying to get his head straight. And eventually in June, he went on a trip that he called to clear his head. And when he did, he took a married woman with him. And
that's the one that is on Facebook, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Was that the last straw for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When we were talking just a minute ago, you'd said something about after the assault that Al was going to get you a car back. Let's talk about that. You moved here with a 2008 Jeep Wrangler, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you owe money on that when you came here?
Yes, sir.
And who was making the payments on that?
My father was making the payments on it.
What happened to this Jeep Wrangler that you moved here with?
I started having problems with my clutch and transmission again, and it needed to go into the shop. And at that time, Al did not want to help me get it fixed. He said, no, we would get a bigger vehicle, a bigger SUV to drive as more of a family vehicle for us and the boys to have besides just his truck.
So what'd you do?
He arranged at Huff Automotives for me to take and sell my Jeep into them.
Do you know what you got for it value-wise?
Huff Automotive, they paid off up to $5,000, and what I received from them was, I believe, $12,000 or $1,200, excuse me, actual cash from them.
The rest went to another vehicle?
No, sir.
Did you trade it into Huff's or just sell it to them?
I sold it to them.
Then what did you do?
I took that money and I used it for our bills. Our light bills were never under $200 a month. So I had to pay the light bill before they got shut off. And I did pay one loan that I took out to come up there on. I still owed approximately $300 on, and I paid that off. The rest I used for household groceries and items.
Now, you and I went through the blue book on this, and there's several values that talk like between $12,000 and $15,000. How do you get $1,200?
The transmission was still acting up, and because of that, and my father offered to help me fix the transmission. He offered to pay for it, but Al did not want him to do that. He just wanted to get rid of the Jeep. So because the transmission was acting up, they only gave me the payoff in just the $1,200 over for it.
Was there any plan for you or Mr. Aguilar to replace that vehicle eventually?
Yes, sir. He had discussed before I took it into them that we would get some kind of SUV to be able to have as a family vehicle for me to drive and for the boys to be, comfortable in. And if we wanted to take family trips, it would be a good family trip vehicle.
Well, Jackson's not really known for a lot of rapid transit here. How are you getting around without a vehicle?
I wasn't. I actually was fortunate enough to work where we lived in the apartments there. I was a leasing agent in that office.
So what would you like the court to do to compensate you for the loss of that vehicle, ma'am?
I would like to at least get the blue book value of that vehicle so I can take that and put it towards a vehicle for me to drive.
Are you still without a vehicle?
Yes.
At any time, did Mr. Aguilar or yourself replace that vehicle? Did you have anything to drive at all there?
He had gone and bought a Cadillac. I don't remember the exact year of the Cadillac, but he had gone and purchased a Cadillac that he had gotten from off of Marketplace on Facebook. And he paid approximately $4,200 for it and just showed up with it. I never saw the vehicle. I never agreed with it. It was not something we discussed together. He just showed up with it and said, here, this is what you get to drive.
Was it titled in your name at all?
No, sir. He would not put anything in my name because he was having issues with his ex-wife.
Now, on our trial brief, you gave me a list of, it's titled List of Items I Gathered from the House on 4272 Wellington. You remember that?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, do you have that?
I do.
Andy, you've got that right?
I do.
You made this list. What is this list? Is it just simply the items you took when you moved out in June of 2020?
Yes, sir.
I see you've got some explanations, like the first one says 1 couch and 1 love seat. Then in parentheses it says he gave his sister our other couch and chair in November. What are you trying to tell the court here?
He had to move out once the charges were filed against him for the assault in Indiana. And I lost my job and I had to leave because of the protective order. He had to move out of the apartment. They were not going to allow him to stay with a felony charge pending upon him. And he gave away multiple items that were ours from his home. Most of them he gave to his family and his sister. Other things he gave to my boss and some of my coworkers. He gave our pets to. He gave
I mean, gave
the
your,
car to his sister.
hold on, pets? You have a
Yes,
cat or
sir.
a
We
dog?
had, oh, no, sir. We had, get leopard geckos and
Okay,
things like that. That's one reason the light bill was so high. We had heating pads for them.
are any of those items on that list that we provided to the court, were any of these Mr. Aguilar's that weren't replacements for stuff that was gone?
No, sir.
You saw that Mr. Aguilar had provided a similar list in his trial brief. Do you remember getting that?
Yes, sir, I did.
You also made some notes for me, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He talks about a queen size bed, and you have an explanation. What's the bed situation there?
We had purchased a queen size bed to go in our guest room. And so when I went, after I discovered that he had taken a married woman on this trip that he was on, I went up there to get my belongings and get out of the home. I was done. And I did take the queen size bed because I left him the California king bed and I needed something to sleep on.
Okay. Number 8, it talks about a Vizio soundbar and subwoofer. Can you tell the court about that?
Yes, sir. That was attached to the large TV, and we also had 3 of those in the home, and I only took 1.
Is that the same for the Fire Sticks?
Yes, sir.
It looks as though there's a 5-drawer chest dresser. How many of those existed?
The 5-drawer chest dressers, we had 2 of those, I believe, and I took 1.
Is that the same for the Harley backpack and the Harley wheeled equipment?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, he helped me to pack those when I left the 1st of March to take with me on the trip.
Were there Xboxes for yourselves or the children?
Yes, there was. We had purchased 2 Xboxes. He had one in the boys' room. And then there was a family Xbox that was in the living room that was for the family. And that is the one that I took with me.
So he wasn't left without an Xbox, right?
No, sir.
Okay. On the second page, he lists at the very top, Lane Home Solution, faux leather sofa and couch. And he lists the price. Did you remove those?
Yes, sir, I did.
Why?
Because he gave our other furniture without my knowledge or anything to his sister. And those were new couches and chairs.
When did he give them to his sister?
He gave those to his sister in November after the assault when he moved out of the apartment.
What about the Copper Chef sets of pans?
I did take those because my pans that I originally purchased once I arrived up there were in the camper toy hauler that I had no access to, which he also gave to his sister.
How much? You've seen that list of 56 items. Did you take any of these items that left him with less than half, so to speak?
No, sir.
Are you out some money for some personal property that's disappeared while you were married?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the court a list of a few of those items that are gone that you're without?
I am without. I have several items of clothing. I have personal pictures of my children and myself from when they were young. I had some craft items that were still there. I did have a couple of blankets and towels that I had brought into the relationship. And I also had a leather vest that I had purchased when we rode the motorcycle. And then we had purchased a leather jacket and the leather chaps, the riding chaps for me. And those I could not get because they were in a storage facility that I did not have access to.
What would be the total amount that you believe would compensate you for the items that you didn't get back during the marriage?
$1,200.
You're asking for the court then to compensate you for the Jeep, the medical bills from the assault by Mr. Aguilar, and personal property. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You have some moving expenses, but you understand that those generally aren't compensable, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how hard it would be to find out exactly what you owe that ambulance company?
No, sir. When I contacted the hospital, they were going to inquire as to it, if they had the billing or if it was going to be a separate entity. But they were short-staffed because of COVID, so it was going to take a few days to get that information.
Very good. That's all I have for now, Your Honor. Thank you.
So, just while we're on the subject, that ambulance charge was incurred back in October of 2019.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Here we are, February of 2021, and you still haven't seen a bill?
When I moved, they still had the address from there, and I did not realize that at the time. I had put in for a change of address, and I had not gotten it yet. I received a statement from them. No, sir.
Did you get other mail forwarded from that address?
Very, very little. It was junk mail, ads, things like that. I didn't get any major mail at all.
Well, wouldn't you assume that if you got junk mail forwarded, you also would have gotten important mail forwarded as well?
Yes, sir. But when I inquired from the hospital, they still had not changed the address either, and they were still sending it to the wrong address as well.
All right, before you do your cross, Mr. Kirkpatrick, I've got someone in here that I hadn't noticed earlier that was scheduled for 1:30. Let me unmute her. Okay, Ms. Samuels?
Yep.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, I took proofs from you in support of a judgment of divorce, but you've not submitted a judgment to the court yet?
No, I talked to somebody at the front of the court when I dropped the paperwork off the other day, because like I said, me and Desmond had an agreement that he was going to help me with my son. Well, he hasn't helped me since October, and he's been on 3 lavish, nice vacations, just bought a new car, and has not helped me with my son at all. So I'm going in for child support now.
Well, in that case, ma'am, what we're going to have to do, I'm not going to have time to deal with this today. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. I'm going to reschedule your matter for trial. We will give you a new trial date. You and Mr. Samuels will receive something, and I will
Okay.
hear your testimony and grant a judgment of divorce based upon the testimony I get.
Okay.
All right, and you are still at 126 North Forbes Street?
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, Mr. Samuels is still at 395 Roxbury Circle?
Yep.
Okay, you'll get a notice with a new date.
All right.
All right, have a good day, ma'am.
Thanks, honey. You too.
Well, there's nobody else here. All right, and I see somebody else in the waiting room. I had a minor child interview scheduled. I'm assuming that's what that is. What I'm going to do is put you guys in the waiting room, go off the record. That normally doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes. Let me deal with that, and we'll get you right back on as soon as